There is a moment every gardener knows and nobody talks about. The moment you walk out to the garden in the morning, coffee still in hand, and something just looks wrong. A plant that was fine last Tuesday is drooping at the stem, its leaves have gone a strange pale yellow, the color of old newspaper left in a window, and you stand there trying to figure out what changed, what you did wrong, or what the soil stopped doing right. Most people at that point drive to a garden center. They come home with a bag of blue crystals or a bottle of brown liquid. They follow the instructions on the label and they wait. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it does not. And either way, they never really understand why the plant was struggling in the first place. What soil scientists who study plant nutrition at the cellular level have found changes that entire picture completely. In most cases, the plant that looks like it is dying is not dying. It is hungry for one or two specific things. And those things, in almost every situation, can be delivered within 24 to 48 hours using nothing that needs to be purchased, because they are already sitting in the kitchen in the form of things most households throw away every single morning. This video is about 5 of those things, what each one does inside the plant, how each one works, and the exact mistakes that keep most gardeners from seeing results even when they try these methods. The first one starts in a part of the kitchen most people pass right over. Every time an onion gets peeled in an American kitchen, the dry papery brown skin gets pulled off and dropped in the trash without a second thought, and that is a significant loss. Because those outer layers, the part considered garbage for as long as kitchens have existed, carry one of the most concentrated combinations of potassium, calcium, magnesium, and iron found anywhere in the average produce drawer. They also carry a compound called quercetin, the same plant compound found in red wine, blueberries, and apples that human health researchers have studied for decades. Inside a plant, quercetin does parallel protective work. It shields leaf tissue from intense sun, it slows the creep of fungal infection, it stabilizes the plant's internal chemistry during temperature swings, the kind of swings that come with every summer heat wave or early cold snap. Now here is where most gardeners make the wrong turn. They hear about onion skins and they push them straight into the soil, expecting them to break down and feed the roots. That method works, but the timeline is wrong. It takes weeks for dry plant fiber to decompose enough to release anything usable into the soil. And a plant that is already showing yellow leaves and sagging stems does not have weeks. The far faster approach comes down to something most people learned in school and forgot by adulthood. Water pulls things out of plant tissue the same way a tea bag releases everything it holds into a hot cup. An onion skin releases its minerals into water, and it does it in 24 to 48 hours at room temperature. A handful of dry outer skins dropped into a quart jar of tap water, left on the counter for 2 days. That is the setup. By the end of the first day, the water is already the color of weak tea. By the end of the second day, it has deepened to amber, and that color is not decorative. It is potassium, calcium, magnesium, and the quercetin compounds leaving the plant fibers and dissolving fully into the liquid. Once they are dissolved in water, they are already in a form the plant can pull directly through its roots. No further breakdown required. Poured at the base of a yellowing pepper plant or a tomato that has stopped setting fruit, this amber liquid begins showing results within 3 to 5 days. New leaf color comes in darker, stems show more resistance, the plant's immune response, which quercetin directly supports, starts pushing back against the rot and wilt that had been gaining ground. What comes next does not feed the plant at all. And that is exactly what makes it work. The cloudy water left in the pot after rinsing uncooked rice is something the average household sends down the drain every night without a second look. And for most of gardening history, that was a significant mistake. Washed rice water carries starches, B vitamins, iron, and zinc in small but measurable amounts. Fresh, it is already mildly useful. But the real transformation happens several days later, when the water has been left to sit at room temperature in a covered container. After 3 to 5 days, the liquid takes on a faintly sour smell, the kind of smell that signals something alive is happening. A microbial bloom has taken place. Lactic acid bacteria and wild yeasts have moved in. And what began as leftover starch water has become a dense living culture. In the 1980s, a Japanese agricultural scientist named Dr. Teruo Higa introduced formal research around what he called effective microorganisms. His work showed that specific beneficial microbes added to depleted soil could restore biological activity within weeks. Those formulas are now in use on farms across more than 150 countries, and the core microbes in those professional formulas are the exact same organisms that appear naturally in fermented rice water, at no cost and with no shipping involved. When this liquid gets applied to a garden bed, it introduces a population of living organisms that meet the microbes already present in the soil around the plant roots. The starches left in the water act as a feast, and the microbial population responds. It multiplies. The biological activity in the top layer of soil increases, and the network that connects soil microbes to plant roots, the same network that makes nutrients actually available to growing plants, starts working more efficiently. The rice water does not feed the plant the way a fertilizer does. It builds the infrastructure that makes feeding possible. The mistake that accounts for nearly every failed attempt with this method is skipping the fermentation step. Fresh rice water does something mild. Fermented rice water, 3 to 5 days old, is a different tool entirely. The smell is the signal. If the liquid does not carry that faint sour tang, it has not fermented enough and it is not ready. There is also a dilution step that matters. Fermented rice water should be mixed roughly 1 part to 10 parts plain water before going on the soil. Undiluted, the acidity can irritate tender root hairs, especially in young seedlings. Diluted correctly, it can be applied weekly through the entire growing season without any risk. Now, for a plant that is already collapsing today, none of that microbial rebuilding happens fast enough. That plant needs nitrogen, and it needs it before the next rain. And that is what the third method delivers. Every refrigerator in the country has a drawer where produce goes to finish its life. The soft tomato, the wilted lettuce, the bruised cucumber nobody got around to using. Most of that produce ends up in the trash, or in a compost bin that will not produce anything usable for another several months. But for a gardener who knows the method, those scraps are the fastest acting source of nitrogen that can be made at home without buying a single thing. A German chemist named Justus von Liebig, working in the 1840s, proved something that changed how agriculture understood plant growth. He showed that a plant's growth is determined not by the nutrients it has in abundance, but by the one nutrient it has the least of. Picture a wooden barrel built from staves of different heights. The water inside can only rise as high as the shortest stave, no matter how tall the others stand. Plants work exactly the same way. And in nearly every American backyard garden, the shortest stave is nitrogen. Green kitchen scraps, overripe tomatoes, soft peppers, wilted spinach, bruised kale are packed with nitrogen relative to their fiber content. When those scraps get submerged in water in a covered bucket and left to ferment for roughly 2 weeks, bacteria in the water break the plant cells apart and release the nitrogen into the liquid. The process is called nitrogen mineralization, and in water it happens dramatically faster than it would in a compost pile. The finished liquid is dark, cloudy, and strong-smelling, diluted at 1 part to 30 parts water, and applied directly to the soil at the base of the plant. The results show up within 4 to 6 days. Pale leaves deepen, new growth pushes out from stem joints that had gone dormant. The mistake that burns gardens every summer with this method is applying it too strong, or directly on the leaves. The liquid is powerful enough to scorch foliage on contact, and undiluted it can damage root hairs beyond recovery. It works at the soil only, at the right dilution, and never as a foliar spray. But most struggling plants are not missing just one nutrient. They are missing several at once, in different combinations. And for that situation, a single ingredient is never enough. What works is a recipe. And the next method is exactly that. Banana peels, crushed eggshells, used coffee grounds, Epsom salt, and a tablespoon of blackstrap molasses combined in about 1 gallon of warm water and left to steep for 3 to 5 days. This combination covers more deficiencies at once than anything sold in a bag at a garden center. Banana peels carry potassium, the mineral that drives flowering and fruiting. A tomato plant short on potassium produces small, watery fruit with skins that split as they ripen. crushed eggshells deliver calcium, and calcium deficiency is the direct cause of blossom end rot, the black sunken patch that appears on the bottom of an otherwise healthy-looking tomato. Used coffee grounds add nitrogen and organic matter. And despite what most gardening content says, used grounds are nearly neutral in pH, coming in between 6.5 and 6.8. They will not acidify a garden bed. What they will do is feed earthworms, improve drainage, and slowly release nitrogen through the growing season. Epsom salt, which is magnesium sulfate, delivers magnesium directly to the plant, and magnesium is the mineral that sits at the center of every chlorophyll molecule in every green leaf. When magnesium runs low, leaves yellow between the veins while the veins themselves stay green, a pattern called intervenal chlorosis. 1 tablespoon dissolved into the brew can reverse that pattern within days, but only when magnesium is the actual cause. Yellowing has several causes, and adding Epsom salt to a plant that is yellowing from nitrogen deficiency or root rot does very little. The lesson that comes back every time, with every method, is diagnose before treating. The blackstrap molasses, the dark, almost bitter variety from the final boiling of sugarcane, is what separates this recipe from a slow soak into a fast-acting treatment. Molasses is food for microbes. A single tablespoon in the gallon jug is enough to multiply the bacterial population in the brew within hours. Those microbes break down the banana peels, eggshells, and coffee grounds far faster than the ingredients would release on their own. Without the molasses, the brew takes weeks to become useful. With the molasses, it can be ready in 3 days. And that single tablespoon is the entire difference between a slow drip and a rescue. The last method on this list is older than every ingredient in that recipe. Older than coffee and bananas in American kitchens, older than most of the houses in any neighborhood where this video plays. It is aged manure tea, and every civilization that ever grew food used a version of it. A shovel of dried aged manure from chickens, cows, or rabbits goes into a porous sack, an old pillowcase or a mesh laundry bag. The sack gets tied shut and dropped into 5 gallons of water. Over 3 to 5 days, the water slowly pulls the soluble nutrients out of the manure and into the liquid, leaving the solids safely contained inside the sack, where they cannot burn roots or carry weed seeds into the beds. The finished liquid, diluted by half, gets poured at the base of whatever plant needs the most help. Chicken manure tea carries the highest nitrogen and phosphorus of the 3, and can push a tired tomato plant back into active flowering within a week. Cow manure tea is more balanced and works better for building long-term soil structure. Rabbit manure is the gentlest option and the only one that can technically be applied without dilution, because the nitrogen it carries is already in a mild form. The mistake that ruins this method every summer is using fresh manure. Fresh droppings from any animal carry ammonia levels that burn root systems on contact. The manure must be fully aged and dried before it goes into the bucket, and aged means months, not days. If there is any doubt about whether it has aged long enough, the safest rule is to wait longer. 5 methods. 5 ingredients that cost nothing, because they are already in the kitchen being thrown away every week. The nutrients these plants are missing are not scarce. They are simply being routed to the wrong place. And a gardener who redirects even part of that waste stream toward the soil will, within a single growing season, stop needing to buy fertilizer altogether.